So, semiconductors. This is this is how a microchip or a chip basically looks like. If you to look at from the bird's eye perspective from very far away, then that's how actually it looks like. All these different colors are actually different types of devices which are built in that particular device, or there are different types of, like, it can be transistor, or it can be diode, or it can be CMOS device, anything. Basically all these are different devices which are, you can see in a circuit board, which are present there. But if you zoom in this, in this microscopic picture, you will see this sort of picture. This is taken from, actually it is from IBM, one of the chip which is produced by IBM. What you can see here is these transistors are there, similar to first, in the bottom there is silicon wafer. I will discuss what is silicon and all those things. But for now, you can understand that silicon wafer is actually the semiconductor part of this whole device. Then on top of that, there is oxide insulator, and on top of that, actually we build different types of devices, like transistors, or it can be diode, or it can be various types of things. Actually, CMOS device, any type of things. And then all these different devices, they are connected by these metal interconnects. This is written as metal wiring. And there basically these are connecting different devices. Basically you are making the circuit which you want to make, right, using these metal wires. And because in the circuit you will have different types of devices, so all those are connected using these metal wiring. And there can be actually different layers, like there can be three or four, sometimes even five layers of these metal wirings to make the make your final device, or make your final circuit. There can be different layers of these metal interconnects. So far actually we discussed metal, the electrical properties of metal, which also plays a very important role in the performance of a electrical device. All right. So when you saw here, there is a silicon in the bottom. Actually there is a silicon wafer. This is the first thing actually which is produced. All these things on top of, there are like at least 5 to 10 different layers. All those are actually etched or produced using different chemical or material processes. But in the beginning, first thing which we produce is silicon wafer. Silicon wafer is nothing but a very thin slice of silicon, actually. Okay. And usually in the semiconductor industry, there are two different sizes, like 200 millimeter. One is, this is the diameter actually. So this can be either, diameter can be either 200 millimeter or 300 millimeter. This is actually standard norm. All the semiconductor companies like TSMC, Global Foundries, all these companies produce the semiconductors in these two sizes only. By the way, if you don't know, TSMC is actually one of the biggest, not one of the, actually, it is the biggest semiconductor manufacturing company. It is from Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Actually, that is the full form of TSMC. It is by far the biggest semiconductor manufacturing company. All the companies like Samsung, Apple, they use semiconductor wafers which are produced by TSMC. Then you have different other companies like Micron, Global Foundries. All those are different. IBM was also earlier used to produce it, but now they don't produce silicon wafers anymore. There are at least four or five different companies which produce these silicon wafers. Okay. So this is the first thing actually which you produce. And then you use different processes, different chemical processes, like etching, diffusion, annealing, all those type of different chemical processes to modify, or to imprint your circuit on this silicon wafer. All right. Implantation, all those are different steps which are done after that. Then in addition to wafer, like this is a very mostly used, this is the most used form of semiconductors. But there are other forms also, like this is gallium arsenide. Gallium arsenide is very commonly used in optoelectronic devices. And we will discuss why it is used very commonly in optoelectronic devices. But they can also be formed they are produced in the form of ingots, or these kind of small wafers as well. To be honest, actually, these before these wafers are produced, They are produced in the form of ingots only, and then we chop these thin wafers out of those large ingots. These kind of ingots, first you produce them, and then you chop them actually in very very thin slices to produce these silicon wafers. Okay, so this was just to raise your interest. So that semiconductor is actually one of the very important part of the electronic industry which we see in today's world. Okay, now let us start with some technical discussion. And first thing we will start with is band formation. So in case of metals, if you remember, what happens is that there will usually there is one or two valence electrons, and when we bring these metals together, basically these electronic functions overlap and we form different bands, right? The s band, p band, and they are all overlapping. So that is why actually electron is completely free to move within the crystal, right? In a metallic bonding kind of scenario, that is what happens. Now what happens in case of semiconductor? First, actually, there is something called hybridization. You must have, I think, studied this hybridization very briefly, at least in your intermediate also for JE preparation. Also, there are different types of hybridization like sp3, sp2, like, है ना? In this case, let us discuss about silicon. So, what happens is silicon initially actually has this configuration. The electron configuration of silicon looks like this. There are two electrons in the 3s orbital which are paired, and then there are two electrons in the 3p orbital which are actually unpaired. Okay, then actually when we start, when we start bringing two silicon atoms together, like before the bond formation happens, what actually happens is that these four orbitals, sorry, these five orbitals, sorry, four orbitals, one s orbital and 3p orbital, all these orbital actually kind of mix together. Why this mixing happens? Actually, the reason for that is the energies of 3s and 3p band are very close to each other. So before the bond formation happens, these three orbitals, they themselves mix up together before the bond formation happens. That is what you can see in this picture also. You might be remembering that s orbital looks like a sphere, right? And p orbitals looks like balloons, you can say, right? And then when you mix these 1s and 3p orbitals, the resulting four orbitals are formed, and then you have this and like unsymmetric balloon, like one balloon is bigger and one is smaller. There is some name for this shape, I don't remember that name, but this is how it starts looking once the hybridization has happened. Basically these four hybrid orbitals are formed, and now these four hybrid orbitals, they will all have one unpaired electron. So in the beginning, before hybridization, we had actually two paired electrons and two unpaired electrons. Ideally, if this is what remains, or if we follow the concepts which we discussed in metals, only these two electrons should participate in the bonding. But in case of semiconductor, before the bonding, there is an additional step which is called hybridization, and in hybridization we form sort of hybrid orbitals. That's why the name is hybridization. And then all these four electrons are unpaired, and basically then we can form four bonds, right? There are four unpaired electrons, so they can bond with other silicon atoms and they can satisfy their valence. So we can read out these points also. An isolated silicon atom has two electrons in the 3s and two electrons in the 3p orbitals. When silicon is about to bond, the one 3s orbital and the three 3p orbitals become perturbed and mixed to form four hybrid orbitals, right? This is sp3 hybridization, because one s and 3p orbitals are involved in this. That's why it is called sp3 orbitals. Sorry, sp3 or hybridization also. Each hybrid orbital takes one of the four valence electrons. Hybridization is interaction of energetically closer. This is important. This hybridization is happening only because there are energetically closer atomic orbitals which can mix together and form the hybrid orbitals. Okay, let me bring my pointer. Yes. So now we can discuss how the band formation happens in semiconductor. What will happen is that when the silicon atoms, we bring n number of, where n is of the order of Avogadro's number. When we start bringing them together, what will happen is, first hybridization will happen. As a result of hybridization, we will have four unpaired electrons in four hybrid orbitals, and then these hybrid orbitals actually of all the n atoms, they will start interacting with each other. If we look this only for two atoms, let us say if we are bringing two silicon atoms together, then what will happen is that as a result of two silicon atoms, there will be one anti-bonding orbital, sorry, there will be one bonding orbital which will be lower in the energy, and there will be one anti-bonding orbital which will be higher in the energy, and both the electrons will occupy the lower energy state, which is the bonding orbital. Okay, and when these type of n number of silicon atoms come together, what happens is that because of all the interactions of all the n number of atoms, we form two different bands. Valence band, which is formed by the interaction of bonding orbitals, and conduction band, which is formed by the interaction of anti-bonding orbitals. As you can see here, all the electronic states or all the energy states in a valence band are occupied. Just give me a second. Yeah. So yes, so all the energy states are occupied in the valence band, and all the energy states in the conduction band are empty actually, right? This is the scenario at 0 Kelvin. At 0 Kelvin, or at absolute zero temperature, all the energy states in the valence band will be occupied, and all the energy state in the conduction band, they will be unoccupied or empty. Okay, and this is actually, so you can see there are three steps, right? One is hybridization, second is bond formation, and then because there are n number of atoms which are coming together, there is band splitting, right? And in case of semiconductors, unlike the metals, that these two bands are actually separated by a energy gap. This is also known as band gap. There is an energy gap between these two bands, which is known as band gap. So you can imagine actually, if, because all the electrons are, sorry, all the energy states are occupied in this particular in the valence band. When you apply an electric field, the electrons will not be able to move, right, unless they have enough energy to get excited from valence band to conduction band, because here all the energy states are empty. So once an electron reaches in the conduction band, then it can participate in the conduction electrical conductivity. But as long as it is in the valence band, it cannot participate because all the energy states are actually occupied. Okay, we will discuss this in more detail in the upcoming slides. So let us go through these points one by one. There is a question. Let me just see what is that. Sir, there were four unpaired electrons in hybridized orbital. So do you mean that all four unpaired electrons will go to bonding molecular orbital? Yes, in the beginning, because see, one orbital, and one orbital of one silicon is overlapping, or is interacting with one orbital of another silicon. So when we are having four orbitals on each side, there will be of course four bonding orbitals and four anti-bonding orbitals. So all the electrons which are there before hybridization, they will all be in the bonding orbitals only. There will be total 8 electrons, right? And if you are forming four bonding orbitals, they will occupy 8 electrons, and all the anti-bonding orbitals, they will be empty even after that. All right, is that clear? Okay, yeah. So let us go through these points. Formation of energy bands in the silicon crystal first involves hybridization of 3s and 3p orbitals to form four identical. This should be psi. I think, yeah, I don't know what happened, but yeah, I will correct that. So four identical hybrid orbitals, right? Hybrid orbitals on two neighboring silicon atoms can overlap to form bonding. Psi b is actually the bonding orbital, or anti-bonding orbital, which is psi a. Bonding orbitals are full and the anti-bonding orbital are empty. As you can see in the previous figure here also, bonding orbitals are occupied and anti-bonding orbitals are unoccupied. Psi b orbitals overlap to give the valence band which is full, and psi a orbitals overlap to give the conduction band which is empty. At absolute zero temperature, there will be no electrons in the conduction band, and in the valence band, all the energy states will be occupied. Valence band and conduction band are separated by a definite energy gap, Eg, which is also known as band gap. This band gap is very important characteristic of a semiconductor. In fact, actually, this is the characteristic, or this is the parameter which defines whether whether a material can be used as a semiconductor or not. Because you can imagine, if this band gap is very high, like any amount of kT energy at any finite temperatures, there will be negligible number of electrons in the conduction band. If that is the scenario, if this band gap is very that high, then that material is actually insulator, right? Like alumina is an insulator, because in those kind of materials this band gap is very very high. When I mean high, usually semiconductors, the band gap value is somewhere less than 10 electron volt, roughly speaking. But in case of semi insulators, this band gap value will be much higher than that, so that there are no, almost like for all practical purposes, there are no electrons in the conduction band. There are no electronic states in this energy gap. So this energy gap does not have any energy any energy states. So basically there are no electrons cannot have energy in this energy gap, because if there are no energy states in this energy gap, the electrons cannot occupy any of those states, so they cannot have energy in this energy gap. Semiconductors and insulators are defined by this energy gap, which I just discussed. Electrons within the band are not localized. That is, they don't belong to any particular atom. Wave function of an electron is extended in the entire band. This is something actually which we discussed in case of metals also. Once the bond formation has happened, once the band formation has happened, then actually electrons are not localized. Like what it means is that the electrons don't belong to a particular atom. It can move around freely in the material, remaining in that band only. That is the limitation. If it has to go from valence band to conduction band, then it has to gain certain amount of energy. Basically it has to get excited, then only it can go from one band to another band. The width of the conduction band is also known as electron affinity, energy difference from the bottom of conduction band to the vacuum level. This is another way, just looking at the things which we discussed. So here this energy gap, or this energy difference from the bottom of the conduction band to the vacuum level, this energy is also known as electron affinity of a particular material. Okay. This picture actually I just put it through, but this is the same discussion which we had so far in a different represented in a different way. Like there are 4 valence electrons. Once we have hybrid orbitals, we will have 4 unpaired electrons, and then this kind of bonding will happen. Basically this kind of covalent bonds will form, and this is the band structure of a typical semiconductor, where there will be valence band which is full at 0 Kelvin, and empty states or conduction band at 0 Kelvin, which will not have any electron at 0 Kelvin. Anyone was trying to ask any question? Okay, fine. Any questions so far on the band splitting, band diagram of a semiconductor? Okay. If there are no questions, let us continue. So, intrinsic semiconductor. What is an intrinsic semiconductor is that all the electrons and holes which are there, without the presence of any impurities. Because if we introduce certain form of defects and certain form of defects or impurities, we can introduce these the electrons and holes also. But intrinsic semiconductor actually means that there are no impurities in a semiconductor. All the electrons and holes which are generated, they are without the presence of any impurity. How it can happen is, as I said, if you want to excite an electron from the valence band to conduction band, you need to provide certain amount of energy, isn't it? So we are providing this energy in the form of a photon. Photon is basically optical energy, right? So in the form of a photon, with the which has energy greater than the band gap of the material. If we provide this energy through the photon, what will happen is that this photon will go and collide, or give its energy to a certain to an electron, and then that electron will gain enough energy to jump from the valence band to the conduction band. And then basically, as a result of this, there will be an electron in the conduction band, but at the same time, because this electron is missing now from its position, so as a result of that, we will also create a hole, right? So whenever in an intrinsic semiconductor, whenever we create an electron, we will also create a hole actually. That is the case of intrinsic semiconductor, that the number of electrons and holes will always be same, right? Because whenever we are creating a free electron in the conduction band, we are also creating a hole in the valence band. So the concentration or the number of free electrons and holes will always be the same. And both of these species are mobile, like they are free to move. We know that electron can move in a crystal, that is, we have discussed quite a lot in the previous chapter. But in this case, even hole can also move. That's actually, we discussed it very briefly in the previous chapter. What happens is that when the hole is created, it can move by the rupture of by the movement of electrons from the neighboring bond. So how this actually electron gets formed, or gets free from a bond, is actually when the photon comes, it will give its energy and break this bond. As a result of this, electron gets free, and then hole is created here. So now this neighboring bond electron, the electron which is in the neighboring bond, it can also, due to the lattice vibrations, it can gain certain energy, or actually it can be tunneling of electron also. Due to the tunneling of electron, it can go from one bond to another bond, and as a result of that, actually hole has moved from its original position to its current position, which you can see here. So both the electrons and holes, they can participate in the conduction process, right? Electrons in the conduction band can be treated as a free electron which can participate in the electrical conduction. There was a question actually: how does electron affinity depend on length of conduction band? As I said, somebody has asked, how does electron affinity depends on the length of conduction? It does not depend on the length of the conduction band, it depends on the height of the conduction band. The energy difference from the bottom of the conduction band up to the vacuum level, that is known as electron affinity. Okay, it does not depend on the length will be in this direction. Actually, it does not depend on the length, it depends on the height of the conduction band. From the bottom of the conduction band up to the vacuum level, what is the energy difference? That energy difference is known as electron affinity. Okay. The excitation of an electron from valence band to conduction band requires minimum energy of Eg, equal to the band gap. Thermal vibrations of atoms can lead to overstretching of some bonds, resulting into bond rupture, and thereby free electrons moves in the conduction band. This is actually what we discussed, which was shown in the figure. That was as a, like, we were generating electron hole pair by giving the energy in the form of a photon or optical energy, right? But this electron hole pair, that can also be generated, if sometimes, some of the atoms, they gain enough vibrational energy to rupture this bond. This bond breaks because of the vibrational energy of one of these participating atoms. It starts vibrating in such a way that this bond rupture happens, and because of that bond rupture, there will be electron and hole pair generated. That can be another source of generation of charge carriers in an intrinsic semiconductor. Pair of an electron and hole is created when an electron goes from valence band to conduction band. Electrons and holes both can participate in the conduction when electric field is applied. Electron, is a free particle, so it can, participate in the conduction process in any way. And Holes participate in the conduction process, electrical conductivity process or electrical conduction process, by the movement of counter movement of basically hole electrons from one bond to another bond, and as a result in the opposite direction hole also moves. This is the schematic, how in different ways, how a hole actually is moving. For example, here in the beginning, the when the electron hole pair is created, the hole is generated in this bond. Then the electron from this neighboring bond, it tunnels to the position of the hole, and then the hole moves in its next position. Similarly, it can go to the neighboring bond, and then again the hole will move. You can see that here also. So the hole is moving from one position to another position. In this figure also, here you can see there is another interesting thing which can also happen, is that sometimes these electrons and holes which are moving around, right, both the electrons and holes, they are moving around freely. So sometimes what can happen is that an electron from the conduction band, it can meet the hole which is also wandering around in the crystal. So when these two species meet, this process basically, the electron one electron hole pair, that is annihilated, right? This electron hole pair will vanish, isn't it? So this process is known as recombination. When basically an electron and hole, when a wandering conduction band electron finds a hole in the valence bond, it combines with the hole and goes into a lower energy state. It will immediately combine, right? Because it gets a lower energy state to move to, and any system wants to move to a lower energy state. So that's why this recombination event is also very common in semiconductors. And this actually is a very important thing also, because you can imagine the ultimate concentration of these carriers, it will depend on this recombination rate also, right? If this recombination is very frequent, that means there are a lot of electron hole pairs which will be vanishing every time. So that's why effective concentration of charge carriers will be limited because of the recombination event, right? Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, if I hope everything is clear so far. Then let us discuss how the conduction happens in semiconductor. You might be remembering the band bending which we discussed in case of metals. Similar sort of actually band bending happens in this case also. So when let us say we are applying an electric field in the positive x direction. So what will happen is that because of this applied electric field, the electrostatic potential energy of an electron, that will increase, right? Because the if this we are plotting in the positive x direction, right? Because we have plotted we have applied an electric field in the positive x direction. As a result of that, the potential, whenever we apply an electric field, there is a potential also, right, which varies as a function of position or as a function of x. So that potential will be decreasing in that direction. As a result, because electron has a negative charge, as a result of that, electrostatic potential energy of an electron will actually increase. And opposite will happen for the holes, right? The electrostatic potential energy of a hole will decrease in the direction of electric field. So that is what you can see here, because now the energy of an electron, or the electrostatic potential energy of an electron should increase from as we go in the positive x direction. So that means the conduction band has to tilt in this way, right? Similarly, when we increase this, the valence band will also tilt in this way, because when the when actually the hole moves in the positive x direction, its energy should decrease. So you can see from here. First, let us discuss the case of an electron. So what is happening in this case is, because we have applied electric field in the positive x direction, electron will start moving in the negative x direction, right? There will be an external force on the electron in the negative x direction. As a result of that, it will start moving in the negative direction, and after some time it will go through a scattering event. As a result of a scattering event, it will lose some of its energy, and then again starts traveling. It will travel again, for a time length of mean scattering time, and then it will again go through a scattering event. Let me get my pointer back. It will again go through a scattering event, right? So in this way, basically, it will drift. This is why we call it drift, right? Because it is going through continuously. It is going through some continuous scattering, as well as it is moving in the direction of the in the opposite direction of the electric field. So that's how it will move. And as you can see, the electron goes from a lower energy state to a higher energy state when it is moving in the negative x direction. What happens with the hole is that similarly, hole will also go through the scattering process, but it is losing. Basically, when it moves in the positive x direction, it loses some of its energy. Then again it will go through the scattering event, and it will gain certain amount of energy. So that's how this conduction of electron and hole will continue in respective valence band and conduction band. So you should remember that all the electrons which are free for participating in the conduction process, they are actually in the conduction band, and all the holes which are participating in the conduction process, they are in the valence band, right? Applied field bends the energy bands, as you can see here. Since the electrostatic potential energy of the electron is minus EVx, and Vx decreases in the direction of Ex. That's what we have shown here, right? The potential is decreasing, and the electrostatic potential energy of electron will increase. Electron moves up in the conduction band as it gains energy in the opposite direction to the applied field, while hole moves down in the valence band, right? And because we have two charge carriers in this case, we can define our current density as a sum of both of them, right? You should remember that any Vd, basically the drift, this Vd is drift velocity, and n is the concentration, and E is of course the charge of the carrier. So in this case, we can define this as the sum of conductivities due to the electron as well as holes. So here you can see this term is for the contribution of electrons to the conduction. E is the electronic charge and is concentration of electrons, and VDE is actually the drift velocity of electron. Similarly here, P is the concentration of holes, and VDH is drift velocity of the holes. Okay. So the overall current density, it will be the sum of electron current density and hole current density. And all the drift velocities as well as mobilities, they will be defined as we defined earlier in the case of metals also, right? Vd is simply mobility times the electric field, and mobility is defined in terms of mean scattering time and effective mass of the carrier. So for electron, it will be effective mass of electron, and for hole, it will be effective mass of the hole. I hope you remember the concept of effective mass. So that is how we can define the current density, and then we can define the electrical conductivity also in this form. It will be basically due to the contribution of both the electrons as well as holes, the overall electrical conductivity. Okay. Let me see. At x equal to 0, Vx is higher than x equal to L. So why valence band has energy at while valence band has higher energy at x equal to L? See this plot which you are seeing here, that is actually drawn for electron. Okay. So if you, and electrons are actually in the conduction band. So if you if you look at this, the energy of the valence band, sorry, the conduction band at this point should be higher, right? We are, because this is what we are plotting here actually is the energy, electrostatic potential energy, not the potential. Okay, so the potential should be higher at this, at x equal to L in comparison to x equal to 0. Why valence band has higher energy at, sir, at x equal to 0, Vx is higher than x equal to L. Okay. Vx is, so why valence band has higher energy at x equal to L. This figure actually which we have drawn, that is for for the electrostatic energy of the electrostatic potential energy of the electron. So this if you plot this for a hole, because for a hole the electrostatic potential energy actually should decrease in the direction of x, isn't it? So in that case it will look different. And if you that actually you can see from this figure that when the hole is moving, it is moving from higher energy to a lower energy, because its potential energy should decrease in the positive x direction. Okay, because it is moving in the positive x direction. Holes are moving upwards in the direction of electric field, but it is written inverse in the second point. No, see, they are moving upwards after the collision. See, if you look at here, there is a question actually that holes are moving upwards in the direction of electric field, but it is written inverse in the second point. That is not true actually, because what you can see here in the figure is that when the hole is when hole starts, right, when hole is starting at this position, actually its energy is higher, because these are the energy bands, right? So it is moving from higher energy state to a lower energy state. If you count the number of lines from here, basically in those terms we can discuss. So it is actually moving from a higher energy state to a lower energy state, isn't it? This is just for the visualization purpose. Actually the energy is reducing in the direction, in the x direction for the holes, and for the electrons it is reducing in the minus x direction, because whenever when you're in the direction of the force, the potential energy should be decreasing. So that's why for the holes the force is actually in the positive x direction, and for the electrons the force is actually in the negative x direction, isn't it? So the energy is decreasing for holes in this case. Okay, I hope.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, like, can we say that when the electric field is in the horizontal direction,
Mm-hmm.
the starting energy band gap and the ending energy band gap would be the same?
Yes, band gap will remain the same. Band gap actually
So, like,
is a material property. So that will not change because of the application of electric field.
sir, I was saying that the topmost band in the valence band, like if the
Mm-hmm.
electron starts at the topmost band in the valence band, so it would
So
also end up in the
you mean
topmost band of the valence band.
the whole, right?
Yes, sorry, sir, the hole.
Huh. So can you repeat?
Sir, the hole in the topmost band, topmost energy gap of the valence band
Mm-hmm.
would end up in the topmost energy gap of the valence band after the application of electric field and the hole travels.
Mm, it will end up in the, like, you mean that actually it will remain in the same energy state.
Yes, sir.
Uh, no, actually, no, that is not true. It will remain in the same band. Yes, I mean, if you try to imagine in this way, it will remain in the same band, but actually its energy is increasing, right? As it is going in the
Yes, sir.
positive x direction, actually its energy is increasing, but it will remain in the same band. Yes.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other question? Actually, without this band bending, if you want to imagine how it is happening, you can look at this figure. If this is more intuitive, what is happening is that electron is, as we are applying the electric field in the positive x direction, the electron will gain energy in the negative x direction, right? as it is moving in the negative x direction, it will gain certain amount of velocity or in acceleration, right? And because of that, its energy will increase, and then it will go through a scattering process. As a result of that, its energy will go down again, it will start accelerating, and its energy will increase again. So it will sort of drift in the negative x direction in this way, and hole will actually, as it is moving in the positive x direction, it is losing, its energy is actually decreasing, and then it is sort of counterintuitive, because for holes, this is the direction where the energy is increasing. This band diagram is mostly drawn for the electrons, so that is why it is shown in this way. But it is, if you can see, if you look here, actually the holes, they are losing the energy as they are moving in the positive x direction, although their velocity will be increasing. But that is not the case. Actually, it is gaining some certain amount of energy, and then it goes through a scattering process. Again, it will accelerate in the positive x direction, and will again go through the scattering process. Okay. So, how much time do we have? I think it is not a good. I don't think we have enough time to start a new topic. So we'll, if there are any questions, we can discuss now. And whatever we have discussed so far, you can think about it. In the meanwhile, I will. There is an announcement, because we have finished two chapters, or actually one topic, on the electrical and thermal conduction of solids or metals. We will have a quiz on that on next Monday. Okay. So next Monday during the class, there will be a 15 minutes quiz, like last time. So we will have that, and I hope you got my email that the fourth assignment is also up on Moodle. The submission of the assignment is due on Wednesday, I think, if I am not wrong. You can check that on Moodle. So those are a couple of announcements. Um, yeah, if you have any question, we can discuss them now. Mm. In quiz 2, yeah, the chapter 2 and 3, sorry, chapter 2 and 4, but whatever has been covered, because full chapter 2 and chapter 4 are not covered in the class. So that is why whatever portion of those chapters is covered, only that will be part of the quiz, in part of quiz 2. Chapter 2 and 4, whatever has been covered, you can refer to your to the lecture slides also, for what has been covered in the class from those chapters. Okay. Yes, basically what all has been taught after quiz 1, yes, that will be part of quiz 2, in excluding this chapter, excluding what we started today, that will not be part of the quiz. Okay. Any questions? No. If there are no questions, we can stop here for today, and we will meet tomorrow at the same time for the next class. Okay, thank you guys.